All right, YouTube, benevolent Bill Clinton is warning us that nationalism is rising up in the United States and the UK especially, and the world at large. Oh no, nationalism, that means Nazis now, doesn't it? No, it doesn't mean Nazis. Here's the thing, national sovereignty is not a bad thing. The concept of the nation state is not a bad thing. The concept of globalism is your enemy. And even people that think that they support globalism, if they really thought about it for 5 minutes, they would realize it's a bad idea. What globalism is an attempt by political and fiscal and social leaders around the world, which means generally the corrupt, to take more power under their wing, to centralize things further so they can screw you more. That's essentially what they want. It is not benevolent. It's not an attempt to stop war because they're the same people that start all the wars. It's not an attempt to uplift people out of poverty, or they'd be doing it on the national level anyway. It's not an attempt to fix any social ills because the social ills are being caused by the mainstream political parties supporting globalism by waging campaign after campaign on wedge issues. It's not a solution for anything. It's an attempt to homogenize human society in the social, fiscal, and racial sense further, to keep everybody equally miserable, to keep them like sheep, essentially slaves, number one. To erase culture as much as possible, whether it's language, cuisine, religion, it doesn't really matter. To take people and actually destroy diversity, because diversity in the true sense is I've got a cup of red paint and I've got a cup of blue paint. That's diversity. I got two colors. I mix them together completely. I got purple paint. There's no more diversity. I've got one fucking color to deal with. Both of the prior colors are completely gone. I've created something new. Okay, maybe purple's really pretty. That's fine. But I can't use red and blue anymore. I ran out. I destroyed it all. And the ethno-nationalists are partially right. They say, well, this is going to happen on an ethnic or racial level. Yeah, it is. But you're missing the big picture. You're focusing on one aspect of human culture that you happen to find important. This has been my problem with some ethno-nationalists. You're not seeing the other effects of globalism. You're fixating on just one. Not everybody fucking cares about the concept of race. You may think that's a terrible thing, but from a strategic standpoint, as far as explaining globalism to people, you're limiting yourself. You're limiting your target audience severely. I would say it operates also on culture and every aspect of culture. It operates upon political culture, an extension of mankind. Linguistics, certainly. Language evolves. They're trying to homogenize that. It certainly operates in a fiscal sense. They get the poor and the so-called rich to fight each other. Meanwhile, everyone is ignoring that there are a handful of people in this world, multinational individuals who have fortunes in multiple countries. They do no work. They shuffle their money around and invest in retardation usually, and then they get rich off war. Those are the rich people you should be concerned about. But that doctor down the street making $700,000 a year, fundamentally, when compared to those multinational rich individuals, is still desperately impoverished and little different from somebody who's making $10 an hour flipping burgers. There's really not a difference between them. Bill Clinton is not your friend. Bill Clinton is not some benevolent philanthropist trying to save the world. The globalists will say, oh, well, if we only had a more centralized global authority, we would have less war. But you're the ones causing all the wars. Bill Clinton caused wars. All of these people cause wars. They profit off war. Why the fuck would they want to stop war? The only way that they're going to give up stopping wars to make money is if they achieve that centrality that allows them to make money regardless, and you will be even more impoverished. You'll be even more miserable. You will be even more destabilized. They sit there and they say, oh, totalitarianism could take hold. Yeah, totalitarianism can take hold in a nation. Under the nation-state model, yeah, it can be overthrown by a totally authoritarian regime that kills 1 million people and does terrible things. But now just imagine you establish globalism and the same thing happens. Now it's not limited to one country. There is no outside group anymore that can stop them. If globalism itself is established, if you form a global order, there will be no help for you. Some African nation falls into totalitarianism right now. Its neighbors may intervene on behalf of the people there. It's happened 1 million times before in this world. Some group of people is ground down into absolute desperation. Somebody decides it's liberation time. Now, unfortunately, this happens less often than wars for profit or imperialistic expansion. Unfortunately, it's a relative rarity, but it can happen. If people are pushed far enough so they see nothing but screams and terror from their neighbor, yeah, they probably don't want their neighbor totally destabilized. They might intervene on their behalf. Under globalism, who the hell's going to intervene? The lunar colony? The Mars colony? Are they going to come and save our asses? If we end up ruled by an extremely militaristic, totalitarian central state that covers every square inch of the friggin' planet, that's not the kind of world that I want to live in. That's dystopia. It's not some utopian future of benevolence. You actually think that people with that much power are not going to get corrupted by it? We see people who lead even the smallest, most marginal states in this world, the most impoverished, the most weak, the most lacking in resources and manpower, even they get their tin horn dictators. Even they are led by the corrupt. How much worse would it be if the entire world were led by some sort of council of elders or something like that? It'd be a terrible idea. It will fall apart. It will cause worldwide misery. And eventually, it'll cause a worldwide revolution. Now, what happens after that may be even worse than globalism. It might be that everyone falls into national totalitarianism. Then you get an even worse scenario. Now there are people who are capable of intervening, but why would they want to? They're just going to sit there and slit each other's throats all day. We'll fall into a century of misery. Bill Clinton's not benevolent. George Soros is not benevolent. David Rockefeller is not benevolent. Bill Gates is not benevolent. When they talk about these things, they fall into several distinct classes of people. There are those that are desperately, bitterly corrupt and egotistical. They simply want more power. Then there are those who are fiscal opportunists. They're in it for the money. They realize, oh, well, under globalism, I can simply make more money. It's not that they want to grind people down with totalitarianism. Hell, some of them are probably libertarian in nature. But they want more money out of it. They're not doing it for human benevolence. They're not doing it to stop a war. They're doing it for their pocketbooks. Then the third group of people is probably the worst, and we don't know where Bill Clinton fits in here, and those are the delusional. These are people who will virulently fight for globalism because they actually believe that it will stop the same problems caused by the people who otherwise prop up globalism. The wars, the famines, the poverty, the infighting within nations, all of these things, imperialism and totalitarian sentiment. They see all of these things and they say, well, nations, they're always fighting and having disagreements and things get locked up. We need to make it more central, more efficient, and we need to try to we stop war. We can stop mutually assured destruction. Oh, how wonderful a world it will be. That's not the end result. That's not what will happen. What will happen is that everybody will be enslaved, and that's why we must stop such things. Thankfully, globalism peaked in popularity sometime in the late 1990s. And it's gone downhill ever since. We see the EU. The EU is basically the rudiments of globalism. It's falling apart. One nation's already said it's going to leave. Others are now propping up populists and nationalists. The sentiment there is growing. Backlash has spread to Eastern Europe now with the Visegrad Group. The EU is falling apart. If the EU, which isn't even a true globalist entity, it's a regional bloc that's not even fully post-national anyway, if they can't maintain it, if they get strangulated, if people lash back out against the corrupt there, what do you think would happen on a global stage? It would be a violent revolution. A very violent one. Millions and millions of people all over the world would be killed. Globalism would ultimately fail. It would be destroyed forever. People would, for a very long time, remember how fucking retarded it was. But it could lead to even worse problems. Because then you could get militaristic regimes. Under those circumstances, militaristic and opportunistic individuals will take hold within what used to be nations. They will rally along ethnic, cultural, and linguistic lines. They will take up arms. They will purge the globalists, and then they will be dictators. It'll be even worse. It will crack every nation apart. The entire world will look totally different. Current established powers will fall. New powers will rise. And there's no guarantee that they're going to be benevolent either, even though they form national authorities. We've finally achieved a world right now, partially due to atomic standoff, no less. We've partially achieved stability in the world. And we have the ability to go further. It's not impossible for us to live in peace on this planet. You're not going to achieve it with globalism. If anything, that makes it worse. When Bill Clinton stands up there at this rabbi's biography meeting, and he says, oh yeah, nationalism is rising. Good. I'm glad that it is. I hope it takes hold in every friggin' nation in this world. I hope every nation undergoes a nationalist transformation. Whether it's nationalism with a free market or nationalism with socialism doesn't make a difference. At least it's nationalism. People have sovereignty. They have choices. They can determine their own destiny. They can be their own people. They can have their own spirit, their own gods, whatever it happens to be. It could be very libertarian, very permissive, or it can be outright totalitarian. Still, the same thing holds true. Totalitarianism on the national level inevitably fails. Every totalitarian regime throughout history has eventually fallen. Those that are in operation today might not be here tomorrow. But if you get globalism, you need a worldwide bloody revolution to get rid of totalitarianism when, not if, it takes hold. That is not benevolence. It's not good for anybody. It's not even good for the wealthy. You think that rich brain surgeon over there with a couple million in the bank is going to benefit under globalism? No. They're going to be abused. They're going to be told this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. This is what you can say, this is what you can't say. These are the parties you're allowed to vote for, and these parties are prohibited. You can read these books, but you can't read those books. It will be inevitably authoritarian because the only way it can maintain itself is through authoritarianism. It will be applied to what used to be states. Because people in this world, in these states, they're different. They have different cultures. They have different languages. How are you supposed to centralize a world that diverse? And there's your diversity. It's within the realm of nationalism. That's where it exists. You have none if you globalize. There's zero diversity. These people calling for a diverse world, open borders, all this, you're going to destroy that which you seek. You will destroy it. You're also going to spark, eventually, at some tipping point, again, regional or even worldwide revolution that destroys you all. You're going to be relegated to the dustbin of history. It's just a matter of time. If we continue down that path, it's a matter of time before people undergo a violent revolution. Peaceful revolution will no longer be possible. What? People are going to picket in the streets saying, oh, no more globalism, dissolve the post-national authority. You think they're going to get their way? You think that people empowered to that degree won't simply mobilize the military and gun those people down? Throw them in death camps or something like that? Of course they will. Of course they will. It'll be the biggest evil that we've ever seen. You think the deaths under communism, under Stalin or Mao, were bad? It'll be a drop in the bucket. We need to avoid globalism at all costs. Having international relationships, having diplomacy, having trade between countries, military alliances, things like that. Yeah, those have existed for thousands of years. They work just fine, again, properly managed so that nobody's getting outright screwed. You know, we have trade deals right now that have nothing to do with free trade. There's 10% trade and 90% totalitarianism in them. And people trust the same people that design those deals to govern some sort of post-national authority? I think not. No, I'm not going to trust them at all. I wouldn't. I don't think that anybody should. Because they're not trustworthy. Not in it for you. They're in it for themselves, mostly. And the delusional ones are worse. They actually think they are helping people, which means they're going to fight all that much harder for this post-national authority that they want, that 10 years ago they used to call you a conspiracy theorist if you suggested could ever exist. Now they're openly calling for it. Bill Clinton, George Soros, all of these fuckers. They're all calling for it, very openly and publicly. It's still an unpopular idea, but they're still calling for it. It's almost like they don't understand what they're doing. Now they're making so many mistakes that at this point, I don't know that they're actually going to be able to impose globalism. I think they may have already pissed away their ability to do so, but that doesn't mean they're not going to try to do it by violence. That doesn't mean they wouldn't try to manufacture a world war or something in order to install it. That's, again, what we have to be wary of. We need to think, when things happen in the world that make us have animosity towards some other culture or nation, we need to think about who benefits from that animosity. Usually it's not the general population. Usually it has to do with a few rich, powerful individuals that want more riches and power. That's why most wars now are waged in the post-atomic era. It's not for liberation. It's not even for taking over land. It's to spread some ideology that benefits the wealthy and powerful in some way, shape, or form. That's why they want post-nationalism. They're tired of having to manufacture wars to make money. They'd rather just enslave everyone directly. It would be much, much easier, I suppose. But it's not benevolence. It's not a good idea. And Bill Clinton is totally and utterly wrong. I hope nationalism does rise in the world. That doesn't mean fascism. It doesn't mean the Nazi Party. You know, an extinct German National Socialist Workers' Party. It's extinct. That's not nationalism. That's one nationalistic regime that happened to exist. There are nationalistic systems in the world. The Swiss are basically nationalistic. I don't think anyone worries about them going full imperialist. Iceland is kind of nationalistic. Then again, so is the DPRK. Well, actually, that doesn't really count as nationalism because they haven't united their ethnic core. They're still split from South Korea. And they've got an eternal capitalistic model at this point. They're basically a vassal of China. That's not exactly nationalism either. So I'm not sure that that particular regime is the greatest example. Kind of, sort of, I guess. But then you look at Switzerland or Iceland or a place like that, nationalistic. Certain parts of Eastern Europe, Finland would be somewhat nationalistic as well. I don't see them under strict totalitarianism. Actually, I think that these very nationalistic states are among the most permissive in the world. Now, you're looking at states with a lot more interventionism and abuse if you want to find those kinds of problems with fascism. That's about all. Peace out.